Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Science Channel. Tonight, we'll be exploring something both ancient and immediate, something that surrounds us every moment, yet often goes unnoticed. We'll be discovering our deep connection to nature, the air we breathe, the water we drink, the soil beneath our feet. All of it is woven into who we are, into every cell of our being. We are not separate from the natural world. We are part of it, shaped by it, sustained by it, in ways both obvious and invisible. Around us are the familiar sights: trees swaying gently in the breeze, birds calling from distant branches, the soft rustle of leaves underfoot. But there is so much more than what we immediately perceive. The mycorrhizal networks beneath the forest floor, connecting tree to tree, the invisible dance of photosynthesis that fills our lungs with oxygen, the ancient rhythms of seasons that still pulse through our bodies even in our modern world. Nature is both simple and profound, something we experience every day yet never fully comprehend. If you enjoy these quiet explorations, I invite you to like and subscribe or share a simple thought down in the comments. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is rest, settle in, and allow the gentle presence of the natural world to carry you. Let's begin. Every breath connects us to ancient forests. The air filling your lungs right now carries a gift from the green world. With each breath, you draw in oxygen, created by plants through the miracle of photosynthesis. Trees, grasses, algae in the oceans, all working ceaselessly to transform sunlight into the very air we need to survive. Scientists estimate that a single large tree can produce enough oxygen for 2 people to breathe for an entire year. Imagine that, a living being, rooted in one place, silently sustaining human life simply by existing. But the relationship runs deeper still. As you exhale, you release carbon dioxide, the very gas that plants need to grow. They take it in through tiny pores in their leaves, use it to build their bodies, and return oxygen to the world. It is a perfect exchange, an ancient partnership that has existed for hundreds of millions of years. Every breath you take connects you to this cycle, making you part of a global respiratory system that spans continents and oceans. This exchange began long before humans walked the earth. Early plants transformed our planet's atmosphere, gradually filling it with oxygen and making it possible for complex life to evolve. Without them, we would not exist. Every ancestor you have ever had breathed air created by the green world. In this way, plants are not just part of nature. They are our oldest allies, our partners in survival. Forests create their own weather patterns. When you walk into a forest, the air feels different. It is cooler, moister, more alive somehow. This is not just your imagination. Forests actively create their own microclimates, their own weather systems within the larger atmosphere. Through a process called transpiration, trees release water vapor through their leaves. A single mature tree can release hundreds of liters of water into the air each day. When millions of trees do this together, they create clouds, influence rainfall patterns, and even cool the surrounding air. The Amazon rainforest is so powerful in this regard that it has been called the lungs of the earth, though that phrase does not quite capture the full truth. The Amazon generates much of its own rainfall through transpiration, creating a self-sustaining system of moisture that feeds the forest and influences weather patterns across South America and beyond. When large areas of forest are removed, rainfall patterns change, sometimes hundreds of kilometers away. This means that forests do not simply exist within the climate, they help create it. They are active participants in the Earth's weather systems, drawing moisture from the soil and releasing it to the sky. where it forms clouds and eventually returns as rain. This cycle has shaped the evolution of life on land, creating the conditions that allow such incredible biodiversity to flourish. When you stand beneath forest trees and feel the cool air on your skin, you are experiencing their work directly. Trees communicate through underground networks. Beneath your feet, invisible to the eye, an ancient internet operates. Trees are not isolated individuals competing for resources. They are members of a vast community, connected through thread-like fungi called mycorrhizae. These fungal networks wrap around tree roots and extend through the soil, linking tree to tree, sometimes across entire forests. Through these connections, trees share nutrients, water, and even chemical signals that warn of danger. When one tree is attacked by insects, it can send chemical warnings through the fungal network, alerting neighboring trees to produce defensive compounds in their leaves. Mother trees, the largest and oldest in a forest, have been observed sending extra nutrients to younger saplings, especially their own offspring, helping them survive in the deep shade of the forest floor. Some trees even keep the stumps of felled companions alive for years, feeding them through root connections. Scientists call this network the Wood Wide Web, and its discovery has transformed our understanding of forests. Trees are not simply individual organisms. They are nodes in a living network, sharing resources and information in ways that benefit the entire forest community. This cooperation has existed for hundreds of millions of years, long before humans developed their own communication networks. When you walk through a forest, you are walking through a landscape alive, with silent conversation. Your body follows ancient seasonal rhythms. Even if you live in a city, surrounded by artificial light and temperature-controlled buildings, your body still remembers the seasons. Deep within your cells, ancient rhythms pulse in time with the natural world. Your sleep patterns shift with the changing length of days. Your immune system strengthens in certain seasons and relaxes in others. Your mood, your energy levels, your appetite, all are influenced by seasonal changes that our ancestors experienced much more directly. Before electric lighting, humans lived much more closely aligned with natural light cycles. We woke with the sun and slept when darkness fell. Our bodies produced melatonin, the sleep hormone, in response to the fading light of evening. Seasonal changes in daylight duration triggered shifts in behavior and physiology that helped us survive. Even today, many people experience seasonal affective disorder in winter, a reminder that our bodies still respond to the decrease in sunlight. Other animals show these rhythms even more clearly. Birds migrate thousands of kilometers, guided by the changing seasons. Bears hibernate, slowing their metabolism to survive the lean months. Trees go dormant, dropping their leaves and conserving energy. These are not learned behaviors, but ancient responses encoded in DNA, shaped by millions of years of evolution. The same forces that guide these creatures still influence us, though we often ignore or override them with modern conveniences. The soil beneath your feet contains billions of living organisms. A single handful of healthy soil contains more living organisms than there are people on Earth. Billions of bacteria, millions of fungi, thousands of protozoa and nematodes, all working together in an invisible ecosystem beneath our feet. This community breaks down dead plant and animal matter, recycling nutrients and making them available for new growth. Without soil organisms, life, as we know it, would not be possible. These tiny creatures do work that seems almost magical. They transform fallen leaves into rich humus. They fix nitrogen from the air and make it accessible to plants. They defend plant roots against pathogens. They create the structure of soil itself, binding particles together and creating spaces for air and water. Some bacteria can even break down pollutants, cleaning contaminated soil over time. The vast majority of these organisms have never been identified or studied. Scientists estimate that only a small fraction of soil microbes have been cultured in laboratories. Each handful of soil is like an alien world, filled with species we have never named, relationships we do not yet understand. Yet all of this complexity exists beneath every step we take, working quietly to support the green world above. Plants have been shaping Earth for billions of years. Plants did not simply appear on a ready-made Earth. They created much of the world we recognize today. When plants first colonized the land over 400 million years ago, they began transforming the planet in profound ways. Their roots broke down rock, creating the first true soils. They absorbed carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, gradually cooling the planet. They released oxygen, building up the breathable atmosphere we depend on today. This transformation took hundreds of millions of years, but its effects were revolutionary. Before plants covered the land, continents were barren expanses of rock and sand, more alien than anything we see today. Plants changed that, creating the green world we now take for granted. They made it possible for animals to move from water to land, providing both food and shelter. Every terrestrial ecosystem, from grasslands to forests to deserts, exists because plants pioneered the colonization of land. Even today, plants continue to shape the planet. Tropical rainforests influence global rainfall patterns and store vast amounts of carbon. Grasslands hold soil in place and support grazing animals. Coastal mangroves protect shorelines from erosion and provide nurseries for fish. Plants are not passive inhabitants of Earth. They are active engineers, constantly shaping and reshaping the environments they inhabit. Water connects all living things on Earth. Every living cell contains water. From the smallest bacterium to the largest whale, life is built on a foundation of water molecules. Your own body is roughly 60% water by weight, and every biological process you depend on requires it. Water dissolves nutrients, transports materials within cells, regulates temperature, and provides the medium in which the chemistry of life unfolds. But the water in your body is not separate from the water in the world. It is the same water, cycling endlessly through the environment. The water you drink today might have fallen as rain last week, or might have been locked in a glacier for thousands of years. It might have been part of a dinosaur once, or a trilobite swimming in ancient seas. Water moves through the hydrological cycle, evaporating from oceans, forming clouds, falling as rain, flowing through rivers, and returning to the sea. This cycle connects all life on Earth. The rain that waters a forest feeds the trees that release moisture back to the sky. That moisture travels on the wind and falls again, perhaps on cropland that grows the food you eat. The water in your cells today will eventually return to the environment, continuing its endless journey. You are not separate from this cycle. You are part of it, a temporary vessel for water that is older than the mountains. The moon's gravity moves more than just tides. When you look up at the moon, you are seeing a celestial body that has profoundly shaped life on Earth. The moon's gravitational pull creates the tides, the rhythmic rise and fall of ocean waters that occurs twice each day. But tides do more than just move water. They influence the behavior and evolution of countless marine organisms, and even some terrestrial ones. Many sea creatures time their reproduction to the tides. Corals release their eggs and sperm in synchronized mass-spawning events triggered by the full moon. Grunion fish ride the highest tides of the year onto beaches to lay their eggs in the sand. Shore crabs, sea turtles, and countless other species organize their lives around tidal rhythms. These behaviors are not arbitrary. They are responses to a cosmic force that has been shaping life for billions of years. Even humans show subtle responses to the moon. Some studies suggest that sleep patterns may be influenced by the lunar cycle, though the evidence is still debated. What is clear is that the moon has been our companion for nearly the entire history of life on Earth, its gravity stirring the oceans and influencing the evolution of life. When you see the moon hanging in the sky, you are seeing a force that helped shape the very possibility of your existence. Trees can live for thousands of years. Some trees alive today were already ancient when written history began. Bristlecone pines growing in the mountains of California and Nevada can live for over 5,000 years. The oldest known individual tree, named Methuselah, germinated over 4,800 years ago, before the pyramids of Egypt were built. To stand beside such a tree is to stand beside a living witness to millennia of human history. These ancient trees survive by growing slowly in harsh conditions, where competition is minimal. They twist and weather, their wood becoming incredibly dense, resistant to rot and insects. Each ring in their trunk records a year of growth, creating an archive of climate conditions stretching back thousands of years. Scientists study these rings to understand past climate patterns, droughts, and even historical volcanic eruptions that affected global weather. But bristlecones are not the only long-lived trees. Some coast redwoods have lived for over 2,000 years. Certain olive trees in the Mediterranean are believed to be over 1,000 years old, still producing fruit. Baobabs in Africa can live for more than 2,000 years, their massive trunks storing water through long dry seasons. These trees remind us that time moves differently for different forms of life. While human lives flash by in decades, some trees measure time in millennia. Forests absorb and store vast amounts of carbon. Trees are not just beautiful. They are also vital carbon storage systems. Through photosynthesis, trees absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and use it to build their wood, leaves, and roots. A single mature tree can absorb roughly 21 kilograms of carbon dioxide each year. Multiply that by the billions of trees in forests worldwide, and you see the scale of this natural carbon capture system. But it is not just the living trees that matter. Fallen logs, leaf litter, and the soil beneath forests also store carbon. When leaves fall and decompose, much of their carbon is incorporated into the soil, where it can remain for decades or even centuries. Old-growth forests, with their massive trees and deep soils, are particularly important carbon stores. Some estimates suggest that forests hold more carbon than the entire atmosphere. This is why forest protection and restoration are so important in addressing climate change. When forests are cut down and burned, the carbon they have been storing is released back into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. But when forests are protected or new forests are planted, they act as carbon sinks, pulling greenhouse gases out of the air. The natural world offers us solutions to challenges we have created if we are willing to work with it. Birds navigate using Earth's magnetic field. Every spring and fall, billions of birds undertake remarkable journeys, flying thousands of kilometers between breeding and wintering grounds. Some Arctic terns travel from pole to pole, covering over 70,000 kilometers in a single year. How do they find their way across such vast distances? One important tool is Earth's magnetic field, an invisible force that permeates the planet. Many birds have a sense called magnetoreception, the ability to detect Earth's magnetic field and use it for navigation. Tiny crystals of magnetite in their beaks, or special proteins in their eyes, may help them sense the field's direction and strength. This allows them to maintain their heading even on cloudy days, when the sun and stars are not visible. It is like having a built-in compass. always pointing the way. But magnetoreception is just one of many navigation tools birds use. They also orient by the sun and stars, follow coastlines and rivers, recognize landmarks, and even use their sense of smell. Some young birds seem to inherit a rough map of their migration route, while others learn it by following experienced adults. This combination of inherited instincts and learned behavior allows birds to perform feats of navigation that still amaze scientists. Flowers and insects have co-evolved for millions of years. When you see a bee visiting a flower, you are witnessing the result of millions of years of mutual evolution. Flowers produce nectar and pollen, rich in sugars and proteins, and in return, insects carry pollen from flower to flower, enabling plants to reproduce. This relationship is so ancient and so intimate that many flowers and their pollinators have become specifically adapted to each other. Some flowers have shapes that match the bodies of their pollinators perfectly. Long tubular flowers suit the long tongues of moths or hummingbirds. Wide landing platforms accommodate bees. Specific colors attract specific pollinators. Bees see ultraviolet light, and many flowers have ultraviolet patterns invisible to humans that guide bees to nectar. Some flowers even produce warmth or scent at specific times of day to attract pollinators that are active then. This co-evolution has created some of the most beautiful and complex relationships in nature. Orchids, in particular, show extraordinary adaptations. Some orchids mimic female insects so precisely that males try to mate with them, picking up pollen in the process. Others have elaborate structures that force visiting insects through a specific path, ensuring pollen is deposited and collected. These relationships remind us that evolution is not about individual species in isolation, but about webs of connection and mutual dependence. Rivers shape entire landscapes over time. Water is one of the most powerful forces on Earth. Rivers begin as tiny springs and streams, gathering water as they flow downhill. Over time, they carve valleys, transport sediment, and reshape entire landscapes. The Grand Canyon, one of Earth's most spectacular geological features, was carved by the Colorado River over millions of years, cutting through layers of rock to reveal nearly 2 billion years of geological history. But rivers do more than erode rock. They deposit sediment as well, building fertile floodplains where some of the world's most productive farmland exists. The Nile River floods once created rich agricultural land that supported ancient Egyptian civilization. The Ganges and Brahmaputra rivers build the vast delta of Bangladesh, one of the most densely populated regions on Earth. Rivers connect mountains to seas, distributing nutrients and shaping ecosystems along their entire length. Rivers are also highways for migrating animals. Salmon swim upstream to spawn in the same streams where they were born, sometimes traveling hundreds of kilometers against the current. This migration brings nutrients from the ocean deep into forests, feeding not just fish, but bears, eagles, and even trees. Rivers connect different habitats, creating corridors along which life and nutrients flow. They remind us that landscapes are not static, but constantly changing, shaped by the patient work of water over time. The ocean produces more oxygen than all forests combined. When people think of oxygen production, they often picture rainforests. But the ocean is actually the planet's largest oxygen source. Tiny photosynthetic organisms called phytoplankton, mostly microscopic algae and bacteria, float near the ocean surface in unimaginable numbers. Though each individual is invisible to the naked eye, collectively they produce at least half of the oxygen in Earth's atmosphere. These microscopic organisms form the base of the ocean's food web. They are eaten by zooplankton, which are eaten by small fish, which are eaten by larger fish, all the way up to whales and sharks. This means that the ocean's most important organisms are also its smallest. A single liter of seawater can contain millions of phytoplankton cells, each one photosynthesizing, producing oxygen, and supporting the web of life. Phytoplankton also play a crucial role in regulating Earth's climate. They absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and when they die, much of this carbon sinks to the ocean floor, effectively removing it from the atmosphere for hundreds or thousands of years. Some scientists have proposed fertilizing the ocean to increase phytoplankton growth as a way to combat climate change, though such schemes remain controversial. What is clear is that these tiny organisms, invisible to most people, are among the most important life forms on the planet. Mountains create rain shadows and shape climate. Mountains are not just impressive landmarks, they are climate creators. When moist air from the ocean moves inland and encounters a mountain range, it is forced upward. As the air rises, it cools, and the water vapor it carries condenses into clouds and rain. This is why the windward side of mountain ranges often receives abundant rainfall and supports lush forests. But once the air passes over the mountain peaks and descends on the other side, it warms and dries, having lost most of its moisture. This creates what meteorologists call a rain shadow, a region of reduced rainfall on the leeward side of mountains. Some of the world's deserts exist because of rain shadows. The Mojave Desert in California sits in the rain shadow of the Sierra Nevada mountains. The Atacama Desert in Chile is one of the driest places on Earth, partly because of the Andes. This effect shapes ecosystems profoundly. On one side of a mountain range, you might find temperate rainforest, while just a few dozen kilometers away on the other side, a desert or grassland dominates. The same mountain range creates diverse habitats, each with its own distinct communities of plants and animals. Mountains remind us that geography and climate are intimately connected, and that small changes in topography can create dramatically different environments. Animals migrate following ancient routes passed down through generations. Every year, wildebeest in Africa undertake a massive circular migration, following the rains and fresh grass across the Serengeti. Monarch butterflies travel thousands of kilometers from Canada to Mexico, a journey that takes multiple generations. Gray whales swim between Arctic feeding grounds and Mexican breeding lagoons, covering over 16,000 kilometers. These migrations are some of nature's most spectacular events. But how do animals know where to go? Some migrations are guided by inherited instincts, rough maps encoded in DNA that point the way. Others are learned behaviors, with young animals following experienced elders and memorizing the route. Some species use multiple cues, navigating by the sun, stars, Earth's magnetic field, landmarks, and even scent. The mechanisms vary, but the result is the same: animals returning to places they have never seen before, or navigating routes they learned only once. These migrations connect distant ecosystems. Nutrients absorbed in one place are transported and deposited in another. Migratory salmon bring ocean nutrients into freshwater streams and forests. Migratory birds spread seeds across continents. Whales, when they die and sink to the ocean floor, carry nutrients from surface waters to the deep sea. Migration is not just about the survival of individual animals. It is about the flow of energy and materials across the planet, connecting habitats that might otherwise seem separate. Lichens are not one organism, but a partnership. Look at a tree trunk or a rock in a forest, and you might see patches of color, gray-green or orange or pale yellow. These are lichens, and though they look like plants, they are something far stranger. Each lichen is not a single organism, but a partnership between a fungus and either algae or cyanobacteria. The fungus provides structure and protection, while the photosynthetic partner produces food. Together, they form a new entity that is more than the sum of its parts. Lichens are pioneers, often the first organisms to colonize bare rock. They secrete acids that slowly break down stone, creating the beginnings of soil where other plants can eventually grow. They can survive in extreme environments, from Arctic tundra to hot deserts, from high mountain peaks to Antarctic rocks. Some lichens are hundreds of years old, growing so slowly that their age can only be estimated. Lichens are also indicators of air quality. Many species are extremely sensitive to pollution, particularly sulfur dioxide. Where air is clean, diverse lichen communities thrive. Where air is polluted, sensitive species disappear. Scientists use lichen diversity as a measure of environmental health. These humble partnerships, easily overlooked, tell us about the state of the air we breathe and the health of ecosystems around us. Fungi recycle dead material and return nutrients to soil. Walk through a forest, and everywhere you look, death is being transformed into life. Fallen logs, dead leaves, animal remains, all are broken down by fungi and bacteria. Their nutrients released back into the soil, where they can be taken up by living plants. Fungi are nature's recyclers, and without them, forests would become choked with the accumulated debris of centuries. Fungi produce powerful enzymes that can break down even the toughest plant materials, including lignin, the compound that gives wood its strength. They extend thread-like hyphae through dead material, secreting enzymes and absorbing the nutrients released. Some fungi specialize in particular materials. Some prefer fresh leaves, others dead wood, still others animal remains. Together, these diverse species ensure that nothing is wasted. But fungi do more than just recycle. They also store carbon in the soil, build soil structure, and provide food for countless other organisms. The mushrooms we see above ground are just the fruiting bodies of vast underground networks of hyphae. These networks can be enormous. One honey fungus in Oregon is estimated to cover nearly 10 square kilometers and may be thousands of years old. Fungi remind us that the most important work in ecosystems often happens out of sight, beneath our feet. Wetlands filter water and prevent flooding. Wetlands, marshes, swamps, bogs are some of Earth's most productive ecosystems. They serve as nurseries for fish, provide habitat for countless birds and other wildlife, and perform essential ecological services. One of the most important is water filtration. As water flows through wetlands, plants and microorganisms remove pollutants, sediments, and excess nutrients. Wetlands act like natural water treatment plants, improving water quality downstream. Wetlands also store water, acting as buffers against flooding. During heavy rains, they absorb and hold water, releasing it slowly over time. This reduces the severity of floods and helps maintain stream flow during dry periods. Coastal wetlands, particularly salt marshes and mangroves, protect shorelines from storm surges and erosion. They are the first line of defense against hurricanes and typhoons. Despite their importance, wetlands have been drained and filled at alarming rates. Some estimates suggest that more than half of the world's wetlands have been destroyed in the past century, converted to agriculture, urban development, or other uses. This loss has consequences. Without wetlands, flooding becomes more severe, water quality declines, and biodiversity suffers. Protecting and restoring wetlands is crucial for both nature and human communities. Every species plays a role in ecosystem balance. Ecosystems are intricate webs of relationships. with each species connected to many others. Remove one species, and the effects can ripple through the entire system. This was dramatically demonstrated when wolves were reintroduced to Yellowstone National Park after being absent for nearly 70 years. The wolves hunted elk, which had become overabundant. Elk began avoiding areas where they were vulnerable, allowing vegetation in those areas to recover. As vegetation recovered, other changes followed. Beavers returned because willow trees grew back, providing the materials they needed for dams. Beaver dams created ponds that provided habitat for fish, amphibians, and waterfowl. Songbirds increased because of more diverse vegetation. Even the rivers changed their course, as recovering vegetation stabilized riverbanks. All of this from the return of a single species, a top predator that had been missing from the ecosystem. This phenomenon, where a single species has disproportionate effects on its ecosystem, is called a keystone species. Sea otters in kelp forests, prairie dogs in grasslands, elephants in savannas, all are keystone species whose presence shapes entire ecosystems. But even species that are not keystones play important roles. Every organism is connected to others through food webs, competition, mutualism, and countless other relationships. Biodiversity is not just about having many species. It is about maintaining the complex web of connections that make ecosystems function. Plants produce chemicals to defend themselves. Plants cannot run away from danger, but they are far from defenseless. Many plants produce chemical compounds that deter herbivores or inhibit competing plants. Some of these compounds are mildly unpleasant, making leaves bitter or tough. Others are highly toxic, potentially lethal to animals that eat them. The variety and sophistication of plant chemical defenses is astonishing. Some plants produce toxins only when damaged, conserving resources until they are needed. When an insect begins eating a leaf, the plant can sense the damage and rapidly produce defensive chemicals. Some even release volatile compounds into the air that attract predators of the herbivores attacking them. It is as if the plant is calling for help, summoning wasps to parasitize the caterpillars eating its leaves. Humans have long used plant chemical defenses for our own purposes. Many medicines are derived from plant compounds that evolved as defenses. Aspirin comes from willow bark. Quinine, used to treat malaria, comes from cinchona tree bark. Taxol, a cancer treatment drug, comes from Pacific yew trees. Caffeine, nicotine, and countless other compounds humans use or enjoy originally evolved to protect plants from insects and other threats. In using these compounds, we are tapping into millions of years of evolutionary experimentation. Coral reefs are built by tiny animals over thousands of years. Coral reefs are among Earth's most spectacular ecosystems, underwater gardens of vibrant colors and teeming life. Yet these massive structures, some visible from space, are built by tiny animals called coral polyps. Each polyp is only a few millimeters across, but they live in colonies of thousands or millions, secreting calcium carbonate skeletons that slowly build up into reefs. This construction happens incredibly slowly. A reef might grow only a centimeter or two per year. Some of the Great Barrier Reef structures are thousands of years old, accumulating layer upon layer of coral skeleton. The living coral is just a thin veneer on the surface, but it is this living layer that builds and maintains the structure. When coral polyps die, new polyps settle on their skeletons and continue building upward and outward. Coral reefs support extraordinary biodiversity. Though they cover less than 1% of the ocean floor, they provide habitat for roughly a quarter of all marine species. Fish, mollusks, crustaceans, worms, sponges, and countless other organisms live in and around reefs. Reefs also protect coastlines from storm waves and provide food for millions of people. Yet these ecosystems are fragile, vulnerable to warming oceans, pollution, and physical damage. When corals die, the reef structures they built over millennia begin to erode, taking with them the diverse communities they supported. Mangrove forests bridge land and sea. Where tropical rivers meet the ocean, remarkable forests grow. Mangroves are trees adapted to survive in salt water, something most plants cannot do. They grow in tidal zones, their roots submerged at high tide and exposed at low tide. These roots create tangled thickets that stabilize coastlines, trap sediment, and provide nursery habitat for countless marine species. Mangrove roots are architectural marvels. Some species have prop roots that arch from the trunk and anchor in the mud, creating a web of supports. Others have pneumatophores, specialized roots that grow upward from the mud to access air. These structures slow water flow, causing sediment to settle and build up land over time. Mangrove forests are actually growing seaward, colonizing new territory and expanding the boundary between land and ocean. The ecological importance of mangroves is difficult to overstate. They provide nursery habitat for fish and crustaceans, many of which are commercially important. They filter pollutants from water. They store carbon in their wood and in the thick mud beneath them. They protect coastlines from erosion and storm surges. During the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, areas with intact mangrove forests suffered less damage than areas where mangroves had been removed. These forests are barriers that protect human communities, as well as natural ecosystems. The aurora is a visible connection between Earth and Sun. High in the polar skies, curtains of light dance across the darkness. The aurora borealis in the north, the aurora australis in the south. These are among nature's most ethereal displays. They form when charged particles from the sun collide with Earth's atmosphere, energizing atoms that then release light. The colors depend on which atoms are involved and at what altitude the collisions occur. Oxygen produces green and red light. Nitrogen creates blue and purple. The aurora is a reminder that Earth does not exist in isolation. We are constantly bathed in a stream of particles from the sun, the solar wind. Earth's magnetic field protects us, deflecting most of these particles around the planet. But near the poles, the magnetic field funnels particles into the atmosphere, where they create the aurora. What we see as beauty is actually our planet's shield at work, protecting us from radiation that would otherwise be harmful. Indigenous peoples of the far north have watched the aurora for thousands of years, weaving it into stories and traditions. Some saw spirits dancing, others saw ancestors or animals. Modern science has revealed the mechanism, but the wonder remains. To stand beneath the aurora is to witness the invisible forces that connect our planet to its star, a reminder that Earth is part of a larger cosmic system. Glaciers carve valleys and store fresh water. In high mountains and polar regions, snow accumulates year after year, compressing into ice. Where enough ice builds up, it begins to flow under its own weight, forming glaciers. These rivers of ice move slowly, sometimes only meters per year, but their power is immense. They carve valleys, grind rock into powder, and transport boulders hundreds of kilometers from their origin. Many of Earth's most dramatic landscapes were shaped by glaciers. The fjords of Norway, the Yosemite Valley in California, the Great Lakes of North America, all were carved by glacial ice. During ice ages, ice sheets covered much of North America and Europe, grinding down mountains and deepening valleys. When the ice retreated, It left behind a landscape transformed, with new lakes, rivers, and valleys. Glaciers also serve as water reservoirs. They store fresh water in solid form, releasing it slowly as they melt during warm seasons. In many mountain regions, glacier melt provides water for agriculture and drinking throughout the dry season. But glaciers worldwide are retreating as the climate warms. Many will disappear entirely within decades, removing a crucial water source for millions of people. The ice that has sculpted landscapes for millions of years is melting, and with it goes both a water resource and a record of past climates trapped in ice layers. Seeds can remain dormant for decades, or even centuries. Plants face a challenge. They cannot move to find favorable conditions. Their solution is to produce seeds that can survive harsh times and wait for conditions to improve. Some seeds remain viable for only a few weeks or months. Others can wait for years, decades, or even longer. The longest confirmed germination is from a date palm seed that sprouted after 2,000 years, discovered in an archaeological site in Israel. Seeds survive through a state called dormancy, where metabolism slows to almost nothing. The embryonic plant inside is alive but waiting, protected by the seed coat from desiccation, temperature extremes, and other threats. Some seeds require specific signals to germinate: fire, exposure to cold, passage through an animal's digestive system. These requirements ensure that seeds germinate only when conditions are suitable for survival. Seed dormancy allows plants to survive unpredictable environments. In deserts, seeds can wait years for rain, then germinate all at once when water finally arrives, carpeting the landscape with flowers. In forests, seeds can lie dormant in the soil for decades, waiting for a disturbance like a fallen tree to create a gap in the canopy and allow light to reach the forest floor. This seed bank in the soil is a reservoir of potential, ready to spring to life when opportunity arises. Fire is essential to some ecosystems. Fire seems destructive, but many ecosystems depend on it. Grasslands, savannas, and certain forests have evolved with fire for millions of years. Regular burning prevents trees from taking over grasslands, recycles nutrients locked in dead plant material, and creates mosaics of different aged vegetation that support diverse wildlife. Some plants have evolved specifically to survive or even thrive with fire. Certain pine trees have cones sealed with resin that only open in the heat of a fire, releasing seeds onto the nutrient-rich ash. Prairie grasses have most of their biomass underground, in extensive root systems that survive fire and quickly resprout. Some flowering plants germinate only after exposure to smoke. Fire is not the enemy of these ecosystems, but a part of their natural cycle, shaping their structure and maintaining their health. Humans have complicated this relationship. By suppressing fires for decades, we allowed fuels to accumulate, making fires larger and more severe when they finally occurred. Some forests that once experienced frequent low-intensity fires now face catastrophic blazes that kill even fire-adapted trees. Indigenous peoples in many regions used fire as a management tool for thousands of years, conducting controlled burns to maintain habitat for game animals and edible plants. This traditional knowledge is now being recognized as valuable for managing fire-prone landscapes. Animals disperse seeds across landscapes. Many plants depend on animals to spread their seeds. Fruits are essentially packages of seeds, wrapped in a nutritious, attractive covering. Animals eat the fruit, and the seeds pass through their digestive systems unharmed, to be deposited far from the parent plant. This benefits both plant and animal. The plant gets its seeds dispersed to new locations, where they might find favorable conditions. The animal gets a nutritious meal. Different fruits attract different dispersers. Bright red berries attract birds, which have excellent color vision. Fruits that ripen at night tend to be pale or white, visible to bats in the darkness. Some fruits have odors that appeal to specific animals. Durian fruit, famous for its strong smell that humans find unpleasant, attracts orangutans and other animals that spread its seeds through Southeast Asian forests. This relationship has shaped both plants and animals. Some fruits have evolved to be perfectly suited to particular animals. The fruits of some trees in Central and South America evolved to be eaten by giant ground sloths, which went extinct over 10,000 years ago. These trees now struggle to disperse their seeds effectively, and some are declining because their original dispersers are gone. This reminds us that ecosystems are built on relationships that formed over millions of years. Relationships that can be disrupted when species disappear. Insects pollinate most of the food we eat. When you sit down to a meal, you are likely eating the work of insects. Roughly 3/4 of the world's food crops depend at least partially on animal pollination, and insects, especially bees, do most of this work. Apples, almonds, blueberries, cucumbers, pumpkins, and countless other foods require pollination to produce fruit. Without insects, our diets would be dramatically diminished. Bees are particularly important pollinators. They visit flowers to collect nectar and pollen for food, and in the process, they transfer pollen from flower to flower. A single honeybee colony can pollinate millions of flowers in a season. Native bees, of which there are thousands of species, also provide crucial pollination services, often being more efficient pollinators of certain crops than honeybees. But insect pollinators are facing challenges. Habitat loss, pesticide use, diseases, and climate change are all affecting pollinator populations. Some regions have seen dramatic declines in bee numbers. This has profound implications, not just for wild ecosystems, but for agriculture and food security. Protecting pollinators means protecting our food supply and the intricate relationships that have sustained both plants and insects for millions of years. Earthworms build soil and improve its fertility. Beneath the ground, unnoticed by most people, earthworms labor constantly. They consume dead plant material and soil, grinding it in their gizzards and excreting it as nutrient-rich castings. In the process, they mix and aerate the soil, creating channels that allow water and air to penetrate deeper. Charles Darwin, in one of his last books, calculated that earthworms turn over all the soil to plow depth every few decades. This work makes soil more fertile and better able to support plant growth. Worm castings contain higher concentrations of nitrogen, phosphorus, and other nutrients than the surrounding soil. The tunnels earthworms create improve drainage and allow plant roots to penetrate more easily. In some ecosystems, earthworms process several tons of soil per acre each year, quietly reshaping the landscape from below. Not all earthworms are native to their current locations. In North America, most earthworms were wiped out by the ice ages, and current populations are mostly introduced species brought by European settlers. These introduced worms can actually harm forest ecosystems that evolved without them, changing soil structure and nutrient cycling in ways that favor some plants over others. This reminds us that even humble creatures can have profound ecological effects, and that introducing species to new environments can have unexpected consequences. Plants respond to sound and touch. Plants seem passive and unresponsive, but they are constantly sensing and responding to their environment. Many plants respond to touch, a phenomenon called thigmonasty. The sensitive plant, Mimosa pudica, folds its leaves when touched. possibly to discourage herbivores or shake off insects. Venus flytraps snap shut when trigger hairs are touched twice within 20 seconds, a mechanism that helps them avoid wasting energy on non-prey stimuli. More surprisingly, recent research suggests plants may respond to sound. Some experiments have found that plants grow towards sources of sound, particularly the frequencies produced by pollinators or running water. Roots seem to grow toward the sound of water in pipes, even when soil moisture is equal in all directions. Other studies have found that playing certain sounds can affect plant growth. The results are mixed, and the mechanisms are not well understood. Whether or not plants hear in any sense we would recognize, it is clear they are far more responsive to their environment than we once believed. They sense light, quality, and direction, gravitational pull, temperature, humidity, the presence of neighbors, chemical signals from other plants and from microbes. They integrate all this information and adjust their growth and development accordingly. Plants are not passive organisms simply growing wherever their seeds happen to land. They are active participants in their environments, constantly sensing and responding. Nitrogen-fixing bacteria make life possible. All life needs nitrogen to build proteins, DNA, and other essential molecules. The atmosphere is nearly 80% nitrogen gas, but most organisms cannot use it in this form. It must first be fixed, converted into ammonia or other compounds that organisms can use. A few specialized bacteria can do this, capturing nitrogen from the air and converting it into forms other organisms can use. Some of these bacteria live freely in soil or water. Others form partnerships with plants, particularly legumes like beans, peas, and clover. The plant provides the bacteria with energy from photosynthesis, and the bacteria provide the plant with fixed nitrogen. You can sometimes see the nodules on legume roots where these bacteria live. This partnership allows legumes to thrive in nitrogen-poor soils where other plants struggle. This process is so fundamental to life that it has been called the nitrogen fixation paradox. Without nitrogen fixation, life as we know it would not be possible. Yet only a small number of bacterial species can do it, and they require substantial energy to do so. Humans have learned to fix nitrogen industrially, using the Haber-Bosch process to produce fertilizer. This has enabled the food production that supports our large population. But it has also disrupted the nitrogen cycle, leading to pollution and ecosystem changes. Understanding the natural nitrogen cycle helps us appreciate both the importance of these invisible bacteria and the consequences of altering fundamental biogeochemical cycles. Bioluminescence occurs throughout the natural world. In the darkness of night, some organisms produce their own light. Fireflies flash in summer meadows, attracting mates with their glowing abdomens. Deep-sea fish lure prey with luminescent organs. Fungi cause rotting logs to glow with an eerie green light. This phenomenon, called bioluminescence, occurs in bacteria, fungi, insects, fish, and other organisms across the tree of life. Bioluminescence is produced by chemical reactions, typically involving a molecule called luciferin and an enzyme called luciferase. When luciferin reacts with oxygen in the presence of luciferase, it releases energy in the form of light. Different organisms have evolved different versions of these chemicals, but the basic principle is the same. The light can serve many purposes: attracting mates, luring prey, warning predators, or illuminating the environment. In the ocean, bioluminescence is especially common. Some estimates suggest that up to 90% of deep-sea creatures produce light. In the darkness of the deep ocean, where sunlight never penetrates, light becomes a crucial tool for survival. Some fish use bioluminescent lures to attract prey. Others use it as camouflage, producing light on their undersides to match the faint light from above, erasing their shadow. Bioluminescence reminds us that evolution finds creative solutions to challenges, turning darkness itself into opportunity. Ancient trees store centuries of climate data in their rings. Every year, a tree adds a new ring of wood beneath its bark. In temperate regions where there are distinct seasons, these rings are visible, with lighter wood produced in spring and darker, denser wood produced in summer. The width of each ring reflects the growing conditions that year. In favorable years with adequate moisture, rings are wide. In drought years, they are narrow. Scientists study tree rings to reconstruct past climates, a field called dendrochronology. By comparing ring patterns from many trees, they can build chronologies stretching back thousands of years. These chronologies reveal patterns of drought, wet periods, temperature changes, and even volcanic eruptions that affected climate. The oldest living trees provide records stretching back over 4,000 years. Logs preserved in bogs or used in ancient buildings extend the record even farther. These climate archives are invaluable for understanding natural climate variability and putting recent climate change in context. They show that droughts and wet periods have occurred throughout history, but also that recent warming is unusual in its speed and magnitude. Each tree ring is a page in the book of climate history, and by reading these pages, scientists can better understand both past and future climate patterns. Symbiosis creates unexpected partnerships. Throughout nature, organisms form partnerships that benefit both parties. These symbiotic relationships range from loose associations to intimate dependencies, where neither partner can survive without the other. The mycorrhizal networks that connect tree roots to fungi are one example. Lichens, partnerships between fungi and algae, are another. But symbiosis appears in countless forms across all domains of life. Inside your gut live trillions of bacteria, forming a complex ecosystem that helps digest food, produces vitamins, and protects against pathogens. These gut microbes are so important that some scientists consider them an essential organ. You are not just a human, but an ecosystem, a walking community of thousands of species, most of them invisible. This is true for all animals. Termites can digest wood only because of protozoa and bacteria in their guts. Cows and other ruminants depend on microbes in their complex stomachs to break down cellulose. Symbiosis challenges our concept of individuality. Where does one organism end and another begin? The answer is often unclear. Many organisms are really communities, collections of different species, living together so intimately that they function as a single entity. This reminds us that life is not a collection of isolated individuals, but a web of interdependence, with connections at every scale, from the molecular to the ecosystem. Deserts are not empty, but full of specialized life. Deserts seem harsh and lifeless, but they support remarkable biodiversity. The creatures and plants that live there have evolved extraordinary adaptations to survive with minimal water and extreme temperatures. Cacti store water in their thick stems and have spines instead of leaves to reduce water loss. Many desert animals are nocturnal, avoiding the heat of day and emerging only in the cool of night. Some desert plants germinate, grow, flower, and produce seeds in just a few weeks, completing their entire life cycle in the brief period after rare rains. Their seeds then wait in the soil, sometimes for years, until the next rain. Desert animals have their own adaptations. Kangaroo rats never need to drink water, getting all the moisture they need from seeds. Camels can drink enormous amounts of water at once and store it in their bloodstream. Roadrunners can excrete salt through glands near their eyes, conserving precious water. Deserts also provide important ecosystem services. They are solar energy collection zones, with intense sunlight and minimal cloud cover. Many support unique species found nowhere else. Some deserts hold mineral resources or serve as important habitats for migratory species. Far from being empty wastelands, deserts are ecosystems full of life, specially adapted to thrive in conditions that would kill most organisms. They remind us that life finds a way, even in the most unlikely places. Tundra blooms briefly in summer. In the far north, beyond the reach of trees, lies the tundra. For much of the year, it is a frozen landscape where temperatures remain below freezing and snow covers the ground. But when summer arrives and the sun barely sets, the tundra transforms. The snow melts, revealing low-growing plants that burst into bloom. Flowers carpet the landscape in a brief explosion of color and life. Tundra plants are adapted to short growing seasons and harsh conditions. Many are perennials, storing energy in roots that survive the winter underground. When conditions are right, they grow and flower quickly, sometimes producing seeds in just a few weeks. Others are evergreen, keeping their leaves through the winter so they can start photosynthesizing as soon as conditions improve. Some plants even have dark pigments that help them absorb heat and melt snow around them. The tundra summer also brings animals. Caribou migrate north to feed on the abundant vegetation. Millions of birds arrive to nest, taking advantage of the long daylight hours and abundant insects. Mosquitoes and other insects emerge in huge numbers from ponds and lakes. For a few weeks, the tundra is alive with activity. Then, as autumn approaches and temperatures drop, plants go dormant. Migratory animals leave, and the landscape returns to its frozen stillness. The cycle will repeat next year, as it has for thousands of years. Old-growth forests are irreplaceable ecosystems. When forests are cut down, new forests can regrow. But a regrown forest is not the same as an old-growth forest. Old-growth forests, sometimes called primary forests, have never been logged. They contain enormous ancient trees, standing dead trees called snags, and fallen logs in various stages of decay. This structural complexity provides habitat for species that cannot survive in younger forests. Some animals require cavities in large old trees for nesting. Spotted owls, marbled murrelets, and flying squirrels all depend on old-growth characteristics. The deep shade and stable humidity of old-growth forests support unique communities of mosses, lichens, and fungi. The fallen logs provide habitat for salamanders, insects, and small mammals, and they slowly decay, releasing nutrients back into the soil over decades or centuries. Old-growth forests also store more carbon than younger forests. The massive trees, thick layer of organic matter on the forest floor, and stable soil all sequester carbon that would otherwise be in the atmosphere. When old-growth forests are logged, much of this carbon is released. Once lost, old-growth characteristics take centuries to redevelop, if they ever do. This is why protecting remaining old-growth forests is a conservation priority. They are not just collections of old trees. They are irreplaceable ecosystems with values that extend far beyond timber. Predators control prey populations and maintain balance. Predators are often feared or disliked, but they play crucial roles in ecosystems. By hunting prey animals, predators prevent any one species from becoming overabundant and degrading habitat. This top-down control helps maintain balance and diversity. When predators are removed, ecosystems often change in unexpected ways. The reintroduction of wolves to Yellowstone is a famous example, but there are others. When sea otters were hunted to near extinction along the Pacific coast, sea urchin populations exploded. The urchins overgrazed kelp forests, transforming underwater forests into barren, rocky areas called urchin barrens. When sea otters were protected and their populations recovered, they controlled urchin numbers, allowing kelp forests to recover. The entire ecosystem changed depending on the presence or absence of a single predator species. Predators do more than just reduce prey numbers. They also change prey behavior. Prey animals become more vigilant, spend more time in safer areas, and alter their feeding patterns. These behavioral changes can have cascading effects throughout the ecosystem. The landscape becomes shaped not just by what predators kill, but by what they frighten. This phenomenon, called the landscape of fear, shows that predators influence ecosystems through both direct and indirect effects. Decomposers are as important as producers. In learning about ecosystems, we often focus on producers like plants that convert sunlight into food, and consumers like animals that eat plants or other animals. But decomposers are equally important. They break down dead organic matter, recycling nutrients and making them available for new growth. Without decomposers, nutrients would remain locked in dead tissues, and ecosystems would grind to a halt. Bacteria and fungi are the primary decomposers, but many animals also contribute. Earthworms, millipedes, woodlice, and countless other invertebrates feed on dead plant material, breaking it into smaller pieces that bacteria and fungi can more easily attack. Vultures, hyenas, and other scavengers consume dead animals, preventing the spread of disease and recycling nutrients. Even beetle larvae, boring through dead wood, are performing essential decomposition work. Decomposition is not instant. Dead wood can take decades to fully decompose, providing long-lasting habitat as it slowly breaks down. This is why dead trees and fallen logs are left in forests as important structural elements. Fast decomposition is not always desirable. In tropical rainforests, decomposition happens so quickly that nutrients are rapidly recycled, with little accumulation in soil. In contrast, slow decomposition in peatlands has created vast stores of carbon accumulated over thousands of years. The rate and type of decomposition shapes entire ecosystems. Rivers connect mountains to oceans. A river is not just water flowing downhill. It is a connection between terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems, between mountains and seas. Rivers carry more than water. They transport sediment eroded from mountains, organic matter from forests, nutrients from agricultural lands, and countless organisms moving between habitats. Rivers are highways, pipelines, and threads that stitch landscapes together. The nutrients rivers carry to the ocean support marine ecosystems. Where large rivers meet the sea, nutrient-rich water supports abundant plankton, which feeds fish, which feeds larger predators. Some of the world's most productive fisheries exist, where major rivers deliver nutrients to coastal waters. Rivers also create estuaries, partially enclosed coastal areas where fresh and salt water mix. Estuaries are nurseries for many marine species and important stopover sites for migratory birds. But the connection works in the other direction too. Salmon that spawn in rivers bring ocean nutrients inland. When they die after spawning, their bodies decompose and release marine-derived nitrogen and other nutrients into freshwater ecosystems and surrounding forests. Bears, eagles, and other animals that feed on salmon distribute these nutrients widely. Stable isotope studies have found ocean-derived nitrogen in trees hundreds of meters from streams, carried there by animals. Rivers remind us that ecosystems are not isolated, but connected in ways that span vast distances. Grasslands support vast herds and rich soil. Grasslands once covered huge areas of Earth's surface. The American prairies, the African savanna, the Eurasian steppe, all were dominated by grasses and supported immense herds of grazing animals. Before European settlement, an estimated 30 to 60 million bison roamed North America. In Africa, wildebeest, zebra, and antelope still migrate in huge numbers. These grasslands are among the most productive ecosystems on Earth. The secret to grassland productivity lies partly underground. Grasses have extensive root systems, often containing more biomass than the visible parts of the plant. These roots bind soil, prevent erosion, and store carbon. When grasses die, their roots decompose and contribute organic matter to the soil. Over thousands of years, this process creates deep, rich soils. The best agricultural soils in many regions developed under grasslands before being converted to cropland. Grazing is an integral part of grassland ecology. Large grazers crop the grass, but they also trample seeds into the soil, distribute nutrients through their dung, and create habitat heterogeneity. Their hooves break up soil crust, allowing water to infiltrate. Fire and grazing together maintain grasslands, preventing trees from invading and keeping the system open. Many grassland species evolved with these disturbances and depend on them for survival. Bamboo can grow over a meter in a single day. Among the fastest growing plants on Earth is bamboo, a type of grass that can reach heights of 30 meters or more. Some species can grow more than a meter in a single day under ideal conditions. This extraordinary growth rate is possible because bamboo does not thicken as it grows. Instead, the stem reaches its full diameter before beginning to elongate, then shoots upward at astonishing speed, powered by water pressure and cell expansion. Bamboo has a unique life cycle. Many species remain vegetative for years or even decades, spreading through underground rhizomes and producing new shoots each year. Then, all at once, over an entire region or even continent, the bamboo flowers simultaneously. After flowering and producing seeds, the plants die. This mass flowering happens on cycles ranging from 15 to 120 years, depending on the species. The ecological reasons for this behavior are still debated, but it has profound effects on ecosystems. When bamboo flowers and dies, it creates both crisis and opportunity. Animals that depend on bamboo, like giant pandas, can face food shortages. But the mass seeding provides abundant food for rodents and other seed eaters, whose populations explode. When bamboo regrows from seed, it creates young forest, where diverse plants can temporarily establish before the bamboo canopy closes again. Bamboo reminds us that plant life cycles can be far more complex than simply growing and reproducing each year. Kelp forests shelter diverse marine communities. Beneath the cold waters of temperate coasts grow underwater forests of giant kelp. These enormous brown algae can grow more than half a meter per day, reaching lengths of 45 meters from the sea floor to the surface. Their tough, flexible blades sway with the surge of waves, creating a forest canopy underwater, just as trees create canopies on land. These kelp forests are among the most productive ecosystems on Earth. Kelp forests provide habitat for hundreds of species. Fish hide among the blades. Sea urchins, abalone, and other invertebrates graze on the kelp or smaller algae growing on it. Sea otters rest among the fronds, wrapping themselves in kelp to keep from drifting while they sleep. Seals and sea lions hunt fish in the forest. Even grey whales sometimes feed in kelp forests, straining small crustaceans from the water. Like terrestrial forests, kelp forests go through cycles of growth and decline. Storms can tear away large sections of kelp. Sea urchin populations sometimes explode, overgrazing kelp and creating barren areas. But kelp can also recover quickly, regrowing from surviving holdfasts or from spores released into the water. These forests are dynamic systems, constantly changing but maintaining their essential character. They remind us that oceans are not featureless expanses, but contain ecosystems as complex and structured as any on land. Mountains are biodiversity hotspots. Mountains cover about 1/4 of Earth's land surface and contain a disproportionate share of biodiversity. As elevation increases, temperature drops, and conditions change. A mountain slope can contain multiple climate zones stacked vertically, from tropical lowlands at the base through temperate forests, coniferous forests, alpine meadows, and barren rock near the summit. Each zone supports different communities of plants and animals. This environmental diversity creates habitat for many species, including numerous species found nowhere else. The isolation of mountain peaks acts like islands, allowing populations to evolve independently and develop unique characteristics. Mountain valleys, separated by ridges, can contain different subspecies or even different species of the same general type of organism. Mountains are engines of evolution, generating biodiversity through isolation and environmental diversity. Mountains also serve as climate refuges. As global temperatures rise, species adapted to cool conditions can survive by moving upslope to higher elevations, where temperatures remain suitable. During past ice ages, some species survived in mountain refuges when surrounding lowlands were too cold or covered by ice. This makes mountains crucial for conservation, as they may help species survive climate change. However, species at high elevations have nowhere to go if conditions become unsuitable, making them particularly vulnerable. Bats pollinate and disperse seeds while hunting insects. Bats are often misunderstood and feared, but they perform vital ecological services. Insect-eating bats consume enormous numbers of insects, including many agricultural pests and disease-carrying mosquitoes. A single bat can eat thousands of insects in one night. In agricultural areas, bats provide natural pest control worth billions of dollars annually. Their nighttime hunting complements the daytime hunting of insect-eating birds, providing around-the-clock insect control. In tropical and subtropical regions, many bats feed on fruit or nectar rather than insects. These bats are important pollinators and seed dispersers. They pollinate plants that bloom at night, including agaves used to make tequila, and tropical fruits like mangoes and bananas. Fruit-eating bats consume fruit and carry seeds away from the parent plant, dispersing them widely. Some seeds even germinate better after passing through a bat's digestive system. Despite their importance, many bat populations are declining due to habitat loss, persecution, and diseases like white nose syndrome. Protecting bats means protecting the ecosystem services they provide. Bat houses, preserving old buildings and caves where bats roost, and educating people about their benefits are all important conservation actions. Bats remind us that even animals we might find unappealing play crucial roles in maintaining healthy ecosystems. Peatlands store more carbon than all forests combined. In cool, wet regions around the world lie peatlands, wetlands, where dead plant material accumulates faster than it decomposes. Over thousands of years, this partially decomposed organic matter, called peat, builds up in layers meters thick. Peatlands cover only about 3% of Earth's land surface, but they contain roughly twice as much carbon as all the world's forests combined. This makes them crucial in regulating atmospheric carbon dioxide levels. Peat forms because waterlogged conditions limit decomposition. With little oxygen available, The bacteria and fungi that normally break down dead plant material work very slowly. Sphagnum mosses, which dominate many peatlands, create acidic conditions that further inhibit decomposition. The result is that carbon, absorbed from the atmosphere by plants during growth, becomes locked away in peat deposits that can be thousands of years old. When peatlands are drained for agriculture or forestry, or when they are dug up for peat used in horticulture or fuel, this stored carbon is released. Drained peatlands can release carbon for decades or centuries as the peat oxidizes. Peatland fires, which can smolder underground for months, release enormous amounts of smoke and carbon dioxide. Protecting and restoring peatlands is therefore crucial for climate change mitigation. These soggy landscapes may not seem impressive, but they are among Earth's most important carbon stores. Lightning fixes nitrogen from the atmosphere. Lightning is not just a spectacular display. It is also a natural fertilizer factory. The intense heat of a lightning bolt, which can reach temperatures of 30,000 degrees Celsius, breaks apart nitrogen molecules in the atmosphere. The separated nitrogen atoms then combine with oxygen to form nitrogen oxides. These compounds dissolve in rain and fall to Earth, where plants can use them. Lightning fixes an estimated 8 million tons of nitrogen globally each year. This natural nitrogen fixation supplements the work of nitrogen-fixing bacteria and makes nitrogen available to plants that do not form partnerships with these bacteria. Before humans began industrial nitrogen fixation to produce fertilizer, lightning and bacterial fixation were the only sources of biologically available nitrogen. The nitrogen fixed by lightning has been cycling through ecosystems for billions of years, supporting plant growth and, indirectly, all the animals that depend on plants. Some scientists have even speculated that lightning may have played a role in the origin of life. The energy from lightning striking the early Earth's atmosphere could have driven chemical reactions that produced the building blocks of life. While this remains speculative, it reminds us that even violent phenomena like lightning can have creative as well as destructive effects. Migratory birds connect ecosystems across continents. Twice each year, billions of birds undertake long-distance migrations, connecting ecosystems across continents. A warbler breeding in North American forests might winter in Central or South America, linking temperate and tropical ecosystems. Arctic terns migrate from Arctic to Antarctic and back, experiencing 2 summers each year and seeing more daylight than any other animal. These migrations distribute nutrients, spread seeds, and connect habitats thousands of kilometers apart. Migratory birds face hazards at every stage of their journey. They must find suitable stopover sites where they can rest and refuel. They must navigate across oceans and deserts where no food is available. They face predators, storms, and increasingly, collisions with human structures like buildings and wind turbines. Climate change is altering the timing of food availability, potentially creating mismatches between when birds arrive and when food is most abundant. Despite these challenges, birds continue to migrate, following routes and schedules shaped by millions of years of evolution. Protecting migratory birds requires international cooperation, as they depend on habitats in multiple countries. Treaties, like the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, recognize that birds are shared resources, requiring shared stewardship. Every migratory bird overhead is a reminder that nature does not respect political boundaries, and that conservation must be a global effort. Beaver dams transform streams into complex wetlands. Beavers are ecosystem engineers, animals that physically modify their environment in ways that affect many other species. By building dams, beavers create ponds and wetlands where none existed before. These beaver ponds provide habitat for fish, amphibians, waterfowl, and many other species. The standing water behind dams also recharges groundwater, moderates stream flow during droughts, and traps sediment that would otherwise flow downstream. A beaver dam is an impressive structure built entirely from materials the beavers gather: branches, logs, mud, and stones. Beavers cut down trees with their powerful teeth, drag the wood to the stream, and construct dams that can be several meters tall and hundreds of meters long. The ponds behind these dams can flood hectares of forest, killing trees but creating wetland habitat. Beaver families live in lodges built in the ponds, safe from most predators. Beavers were once common across North America, Europe, and Asia, but trapping for their fur nearly drove them to extinction in many areas. As beaver populations have recovered, their effects on landscapes have become visible again. Streams that had become simple channels now have complex wetland mosaics. Species that had declined with the loss of wetlands have recovered. Beavers remind us that individual species can shape entire landscapes, and that protecting keystone species provides benefits far beyond the species themselves. Deciduous trees display fall colors as a survival strategy. In autumn, temperate forests transform into landscapes of gold, orange, and red as deciduous trees change color before dropping their leaves. This is not simply decay, but an active process controlled by the tree. As days shorten and temperatures cool, trees begin breaking down chlorophyll, the green pigment used in photosynthesis. As chlorophyll disappears, other pigments that were always present but masked by green become visible. Yellow and orange pigments, carotenoids, are revealed. Red colors are different. They come from anthocyanins, pigments that trees actively produce in autumn. Why would trees expend energy to produce these pigments just before dropping their leaves? Several hypotheses exist. One suggests that anthocyanins protect leaves from sun damage as chlorophyll breaks down, allowing trees to recover more nutrients before leaf fall. Another proposes that red colors warn insects looking for egg-laying sites that the tree has strong defenses, directing pests to less defended trees. The intensity of fall color depends on weather conditions. Cool nights and sunny days promote the best colors by encouraging sugar accumulation in leaves while slowing chlorophyll breakdown. Drought stress can cause leaves to drop before developing good color. Climate change may be altering fall color displays by shifting the timing of cold temperatures and affecting moisture availability. Each autumn's color display is a reminder of the complex physiology underlying what we simply appreciate as beauty. Mycorrhizal fungi extend plant root systems. Most plants do not have just roots in the soil. They have roots plus fungi, forming partnerships called mycorrhizae. The fungal threads, called hyphae, extend from the roots far into the surrounding soil, effectively extending the plant's root system. These hyphae can reach small soil pores that roots cannot, accessing water and nutrients that would otherwise be unavailable. In return, the plant provides the fungus with sugars from photosynthesis. This partnership is ancient, dating back over 400 million years. Some scientists believe that mycorrhizal associations were crucial in allowing plants to colonize land, helping early plants extract nutrients from primitive soils. Today, most plant species form mycorrhizal associations. Some plants are obligately mycorrhizal, unable to grow well or at all without their fungal partners. The fungus also benefits, receiving a steady supply of energy that it cannot produce on its own. Mycorrhizal networks can connect multiple plants, even plants of different species. This shared network allows plants to exchange nutrients and possibly even signals. Some experiments suggest that stressed plants can send warning signals through mycorrhizal networks, alerting connected plants to activate defenses. Whether this represents true plant communication is debated, but it is clear that mycorrhizal networks create connections between plants that make forests more than just collections of individual trees. Oceans regulate Earth's climate by storing heat. The ocean is a massive heat reservoir, absorbing and storing far more heat than the atmosphere. Water has a high heat capacity, meaning it takes a lot of energy to change its temperature. The ocean can absorb huge amounts of heat with only small temperature changes, moderating climate and making temperatures less extreme than they would otherwise be. Coastal areas have milder climates than inland areas at the same latitude because the ocean moderates temperature swings. Ocean currents distribute this heat around the globe. The Gulf Stream carries warm water from the tropics toward Europe, warming the climate of Western Europe. Without it, Europe would be much colder, more like Canada at similar latitudes. The ocean conveyor belt, a system of currents that circles the globe, moves heat from equator to poles and helps regulate global climate. Changes to these currents can have dramatic effects on regional climates. The ocean also absorbs carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, helping to moderate the greenhouse effect. However, this absorption comes at a cost. When carbon dioxide dissolves in seawater, it forms carbonic acid, gradually making the ocean more acidic. This ocean acidification threatens organisms that build calcium carbonate shells or skeletons, including corals, mollusks, and some plankton. The ocean's role as a climate regulator is crucial, but it is not unlimited, and we are pushing it beyond its buffering capacity. Fungi can decompose toxic pollutants. Fungi are not just recyclers of natural materials. Some can break down pollutants that other organisms cannot touch. Certain fungi produce powerful enzymes that can break down petroleum products, pesticides, plastics, and even some heavy metals. This ability, called mycormediation, is being explored as a way to clean up contaminated soils and water. White rot fungi, which specialize in breaking down lignin in wood, are particularly promising for bioremediation. The same enzymes they use to break down lignin can also break down structurally similar pollutants like PCBs and petroleum compounds. Some experiments have successfully used these fungi to clean up oil spills, contaminated industrial sites, and pesticide-laced soils. The fungi consume the pollutants as food or break them down into less harmful substances. Mycormediation offers several advantages over conventional cleanup methods. It is often less expensive, does not require excavating and transporting contaminated soil, and can work in place, treating contamination where it is found. However, it is slower than some other methods and works best with certain types of pollutants. As we learn more about fungal diversity and capabilities, we may discover new species or strains capable of breaking down pollutants we currently cannot easily remove. Fungi offer natural solutions to some of the environmental problems humans have created. Elephants shape savannas through their feeding habits. Elephants are ecosystem engineers on a grand scale. As they feed, they knock down trees, dig for water, and create paths through vegetation. A single elephant can consume over 150 kilograms of vegetation daily, and their feeding shapes the structure of habitats across Africa and Asia. By knocking down trees and breaking branches, elephants prevent forests from becoming too dense and help maintain open savannas. The paths elephants create become routes used by many other animals. The waterholes they dig provide water sources during dry seasons, benefiting countless species. Their dung is also important, providing food for dung beetles, and dispersing seeds of the fruits they eat. Some seeds germinate better after passing through an elephant's gut. In this way, elephants act as long-distance seed dispersers, shaping plant communities across landscapes. When elephant populations are removed or greatly reduced, landscapes change. Without elephants, bushes and trees can become denser, altering habitat for other species. Some areas that were open savanna can shift toward woodland. This demonstrates that elephants are keystone species, animals whose effects on their ecosystems are disproportionate to their numbers. Conserving elephants means conserving not just the species itself, but the ecological processes it maintains. Whales fertilize ocean ecosystems through their waste. Whales do more than simply live in the ocean. They actively shape marine ecosystems in unexpected ways. When whales feed in nutrient-rich deep waters and then return to the surface, they release waste that contains nitrogen, iron, and other nutrients. These nutrients fertilize phytoplankton, the tiny photosynthetic organisms that form the base of the ocean food web. Scientists call this the whale pump, recognizing that whales move nutrients vertically through the water column. This process is particularly important for iron, a limiting nutrient in many parts of the ocean. Whales feeding on krill and fish in deep water concentrate iron in their bodies. When they release fecal plumes near the surface, this iron becomes available to phytoplankton. The resulting phytoplankton blooms can support fish populations and even affect carbon cycling, as phytoplankton absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. When whales die, their bodies sink to the ocean floor, creating what are called whale falls. These massive deposits of nutrients support unique deep-sea communities for decades. Specialized bacteria, worms, crustaceans, and other organisms colonize whale carcasses in succession, each stage creating conditions for the next. A single whale fall can support 50 or more species, some found nowhere else. Whales nourish ocean ecosystems both in life and in death. Desert plants have evolved remarkable water-saving adaptations. In environments where water is scarce, plants have evolved extraordinary adaptations. Cacti and other succulents store water in their thick stems, allowing them to survive long droughts. Their stems are also green and photosynthetic, taking over the role normally played by leaves. What leaves they have are often reduced to spines, which serve multiple purposes, defending against herbivores, providing shade, and reducing water loss. Many desert plants use a special type of photosynthesis called CAM, which stands for crassulacean acid metabolism. Normal plants open their stomata, the pores in their leaves, during the day to take in carbon dioxide for photosynthesis, but this allows water to escape. CAM plants open their stomata at night, when temperatures are cooler and humidity is higher, taking in carbon dioxide and storing it. During the day, with stomata closed, they use the stored carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. This allows them to photosynthesize while minimizing water loss. Other desert plants are drought deciduous, dropping their leaves during dry periods to conserve water. They may remain leafless for months or even years, appearing dead, then rapidly produce new leaves when rain arrives. Some have deep taproots, reaching water far below the surface. Others have shallow, widespread roots that quickly absorb water from rare rains before it evaporates. These diverse strategies allow plants to thrive in some of the harshest environments on Earth. Glaciers are rivers of ice, flowing slowly downhill. Glaciers seem static, but they are actually flowing, moving slowly downhill under their own weight. Snow accumulates in high elevations, compressing into ice. As the ice layer thickens, The pressure at the bottom causes the ice to deform and flow, like an extremely slow liquid. Glaciers can move anywhere from a few centimeters to several meters per day, depending on their size, slope, and temperature. As glaciers flow, they reshape landscapes. The ice plucks rocks from the valley floor and walls, incorporating them into the glacier. These rocks act like sandpaper, grinding against bedrock and carving characteristic U-shaped valleys. Glaciers also deposit sediment, leaving behind moraines when they retreat. The grinding action produces rock flour, fine sediment that can be carried by meltwater streams, giving them a distinctive milky appearance. Glacial ice holds valuable climate information. Each layer of ice contains trapped air bubbles, preserving samples of the ancient atmosphere. Scientists drill ice cores hundreds or even thousands of meters deep, analyzing the chemistry of ice and trapped air to reconstruct past climates. These cores reveal atmospheric carbon dioxide levels, temperatures, and volcanic eruptions stretching back hundreds of thousands of years. The ice itself is a frozen archive, recording climate history in layers. Mangroves can increase land area by trapping sediment. Mangrove forests do not just stabilize coastlines, they actively expand them. Mangrove roots slow water flow, causing suspended sediment to settle out. Over time, this sediment accumulates, building up the substrate and raising the level of the forest floor. As the floor rises, it may eventually become high enough that new mangrove species, which tolerate less flooding, can colonize. The mangrove forest gradually marches seaward. This process can be surprisingly fast in areas with high sediment loads. In river deltas, mangrove forests can expand seaward by meters per year, creating new land. This land-building process has been happening for thousands of years in places like the Ganges-Brahmaputra Delta, the largest delta in the world. The mangroves are literally constructing new land, pushing back the sea. This land-building capacity makes mangroves particularly valuable in an era of rising sea levels. While rising seas threaten to drown coastal ecosystems, healthy mangrove forests can build upward, accumulating sediment fast enough to keep pace with moderate rates of sea level rise. This makes protecting and restoring mangroves not just an ecological imperative, but also a practical adaptation strategy for coastal communities facing climate change. Mosses can survive being completely dried out. Mosses seem delicate, but many species are remarkably tough. They can survive complete desiccation, losing almost all their water and entering a state of suspended animation. In this dried state, they can survive extreme temperatures, radiation levels that would kill most organisms, and years or even decades without water. When water becomes available again, they rehydrate and resume growing within hours or days. This ability allows mosses to colonize environments where other plants struggle. They can grow on bare rock, on tree bark, on desert soils where they remain dormant most of the year, greening only after rare rains. Mosses are often pioneer species, the first plants to colonize disturbed or barren areas. As they grow and die, they contribute organic matter that helps build soil where other plants can eventually grow. Mosses also play important ecological roles. They retain moisture, creating humid microenvironments on the forest floor. They provide nesting material for birds and shelter for small invertebrates. In northern peatlands, sphagnum mosses are the primary peat-forming plants. Some mosses even have antimicrobial properties and were historically used as wound dressings. These humble plants, often overlooked, are remarkably resilient and ecologically important. Termites build massive mounds with natural climate control. Termite mounds are architectural marvels. Some species build mounds over 7 meters tall, structures that can contain millions of individuals. Inside, The temperature and humidity remain remarkably stable, despite fluctuating conditions outside. The termites achieve this through ingenious design. The mound structure creates a circulation system where warm air rises through central chambers and cooler air is drawn in through lower passages. This natural climate control is essential because termites cultivate fungus gardens inside their mounds. The fungus helps digest the wood and plant material termites collect, breaking it down into more easily absorbed nutrients. These fungus gardens require specific temperature and humidity conditions to thrive. The termite mound design maintains these conditions, essentially functioning as a huge climate control system built by insects. Termite mounds also affect the broader ecosystem. They concentrate nutrients, creating patches of different soil chemistry that influence plant growth. In African savannas, the areas around termite mounds often have different vegetation than surrounding areas. Abandoned mounds provide burrows for other animals. The mounds themselves, built from soil brought up from below, gradually mix and aerate soil across the landscape. Termites are ecosystem engineers whose effects extend far beyond the impressive structures they build. Rivers meander because of the physics of water flow. Rivers do not flow in straight lines. They curve and loop across landscapes, creating characteristic meander patterns. This happens because of the physics of flowing water. In a straight channel, any slight irregularity causes water to flow faster on one side. The faster current erodes the bank, creating a curve. Once a curve exists, water on the outside of the curve flows faster and erodes more, while water on the inside flows slower and deposits sediment. Over time, meanders become more pronounced. The curves migrate slowly across the landscape as erosion continues on the outside and deposition occurs on the inside. Eventually, during floods, a river may cut across the narrow neck of land between two loops, abandoning the old meander and creating an oxbow lake. The former river channel becomes a curved lake, gradually filling with sediment and vegetation. These meander dynamics create diverse habitats. The fast-flowing outer banks are different from slow-depositing inner banks. Oxbow lakes provide still water habitat, distinct from the flowing river. Point bars, the sediment deposits on the inside of curves, may have different vegetation than surrounding areas. The constant reshaping creates a dynamic mosaic of different aged habitats, supporting higher biodiversity than a straight, stable channel would. Boreal forests store vast amounts of carbon in cold soils. The boreal forest, also called taiga, is the largest terrestrial biome on Earth, stretching across northern North America, Europe, and Asia. These forests of spruce, pine, and larch seem less productive than tropical rainforests, and indeed, they grow more slowly. But they are crucial carbon stores. The cold temperatures that limit growth also slow decomposition. Dead organic matter accumulates on the forest floor and in soil, storing carbon for decades or centuries. In many boreal regions, the soil is frozen for much of the year, a condition called permafrost. This frozen ground locks carbon away, preventing decomposition. But climate change is warming the Arctic faster than anywhere else on Earth. Permafrost is thawing, and as it does, microbes that were dormant in the frozen soil become active and begin decomposing the organic matter. This releases carbon dioxide and methane, potent greenhouse gases. The boreal forest is thus both a massive carbon sink and a potential source of greenhouse gas emissions. If warming continues and permafrost thaws extensively, the carbon released could accelerate climate change, creating a feedback loop. Protecting boreal forests and understanding their carbon dynamics is crucial for climate change mitigation. These cold forests, often overlooked compared to tropical rainforests, may be just as important for regulating Earth's climate. Bioluminescent waves are created by tiny plankton. On some beaches, waves glow blue-green at night, leaving trails of light wherever the water is disturbed. This magical phenomenon is created by bioluminescent plankton, usually dinoflagellates, single-celled organisms that produce light when agitated. The mechanical disturbance of a wave breaking, a swimmer moving through the water, or a fish darting past triggers the light production. Scientists are still studying why these organisms produce light in response to disturbance. One hypothesis is that the flash of light startles or confuses predators, giving the dinoflagellate a chance to escape. Another suggests that the light attracts secondary predators that might eat whatever is disturbing the dinoflagellate. Whatever the evolutionary reason, the result is spectacular. When conditions are right and dinoflagellate populations are high, entire beaches can glow with every wave. These bioluminescent displays remind us of the hidden diversity in the ocean. Each wave contains millions of microscopic organisms, most invisible to the naked eye. Yet, under the right conditions, they reveal themselves in a display of living light. The glowing waves are not just beautiful, they are a reminder that the ocean is full of life at scales we cannot normally perceive, and that even the smallest organisms can create spectacular phenomena. Forest floor fungi form intricate networks of communication. Beneath the forest floor, fungal networks connect trees in ways scientists are only beginning to understand. These networks, formed by mycorrhizal fungi, extend through the soil, linking root systems of multiple trees. Through these connections, trees can share resources. A tree with access to abundant water can share it with neighbors through fungal networks. A tree in sunlight can share sugars with shaded seedlings struggling to photosynthesize. Research suggests these networks may also transmit chemical signals. When one tree is attacked by insects, it produces defensive compounds. Neighboring trees connected through fungal networks seem to activate their own defenses before being attacked, suggesting they received a warning through the network. Some scientists call this the wood wide web, emphasizing the communication-like functions these networks may serve. Not all interactions through fungal networks are cooperative. Some plants may use the networks to inhibit neighbors, releasing chemicals that affect competing plants. The networks can also spread pathogens, but overall, the existence of these underground connections challenges the view of forests as collections of competing individuals. Instead, forests appear to be communities where cooperation and resource sharing occur, alongside competition, mediated by fungal networks that connect the trees. Hummingbirds can fly backwards and hover in place. Hummingbirds are aerial acrobats, capable of flight maneuvers that would be impossible for most birds. They can hover in place, fly backwards, and even fly upside down briefly. These abilities come from unique wing anatomy and extremely rapid wing beats. While most birds flap their wings primarily up and down, generating lift mainly on the downstroke, hummingbirds rotate their wings in a figure-8 pattern, generating lift on both forward and backward strokes. This requires tremendous energy. Hummingbirds have the highest metabolic rates of any vertebrate. Their hearts beat over 1,000 times per minute, and they breathe about 250 times per minute while flying. To fuel this metabolism, they must consume roughly half their body weight in nectar each day. When food is abundant, they store fat, doubling their weight in preparation for migration or cold nights. Their relationship with flowers is mutually beneficial. Flowers provide nectar, and hummingbirds provide pollination. Some flowers have evolved specifically for hummingbird pollination, with tubular shapes that match hummingbird beaks and bright red colors that attract them. The precision flight of hummingbirds allows them to access nectar from flowers that other pollinators cannot reach. This partnership between bird and flower has been evolving for millions of years, creating diverse floral forms and hummingbird species across the Americas. The deep sea contains more habitat than all other marine ecosystems. When we think of the ocean, we often picture coral reefs or coastal waters, but the vast majority of the ocean is deep sea, the dark, cold waters below 200 meters, where sunlight cannot penetrate. This zone represents the largest habitat on Earth, containing more living space than all terrestrial ecosystems combined. Yet it remains largely unexplored and mysterious. Life in the deep sea faces extreme challenges. There is no sunlight for photosynthesis, so most food comes from above, as organic matter sinks from surface waters. Pressures are extreme, increasing by about 1 atmosphere for every 10 meters of depth. Temperatures hover just above freezing, yet life thrives. Deep-sea organisms have evolved remarkable adaptations, from bioluminescence for communication and hunting to specialized enzymes that function under high pressure. The deep sea is not uniform. It includes abyssal plains, underwater mountains, deep trenches, and hydrothermal vents. Each habitat supports distinct communities. Hydrothermal vents, where superheated water rich in minerals erupts from the seafloor, support ecosystems based on chemosynthesis rather than photosynthesis. Bacteria oxidize sulfur compounds from the vents, producing energy that supports tube worms, clams, and other unique organisms. The deep sea constantly reveals new species and ecosystems, reminding us how much of our own planet remains unknown. Amphibians have porous skin that absorbs water and oxygen. Amphibians like frogs, salamanders, and caecilians have skin unlike that of other vertebrates. It is thin, moist, and highly permeable, allowing water, oxygen, and other substances to pass through. Many amphibians can absorb oxygen directly through their skin, supplementing or in some cases replacing lung breathing. Some salamanders have no lungs at all, relying entirely on skin respiration. This permeable skin has advantages. It allows amphibians to respire efficiently in water and on land. It permits rapid water uptake, important because amphibians lose water quickly through their skin and cannot drink like mammals do. They must sit in water or on moist surfaces to rehydrate. Some frogs can absorb enough water in minutes to replace what they lost during days of activity. But permeable skin also makes amphibians vulnerable. Pollutants, pesticides, and other chemicals can be absorbed directly through the skin, making amphibians sensitive indicators of environmental health. This sensitivity partly explains why amphibians are declining worldwide, with over 40% of species threatened with extinction. Protecting amphibians requires protecting the aquatic and terrestrial habitats they need and maintaining water quality. Their permeable skin connects them intimately to their environment in ways that make them both fascinating and vulnerable. Alpine plants survive extreme conditions above tree line. Above the tree line, where trees cannot grow because of cold, wind, and short growing seasons, alpine plants persist. These hardy plants hug the ground, often growing in cushion or mat forms that minimize exposure to wind and cold. Their compact growth also traps heat, creating warmer microclimates within the plant mat. Some alpine plants have dark-colored leaves that absorb more solar radiation, helping them warm up quickly when the sun shines. Many alpine plants are perennials with extensive root systems, storing energy underground where it is protected from the harsh above-ground conditions. When the short growing season arrives, they can quickly produce flowers and set seed, sometimes completing their reproductive cycle in just a few weeks. Some even have flowers that track the sun, following its movement across the sky to maximize warmth and attract pollinators. Pollinators in alpine environments are precious. On cold, cloudy days, few insects are active. Plants must take advantage of every warm, sunny moment when pollinators might visit. Some plants provide rewards like nectar, while others create warm spaces inside their flowers where insects can warm up. These mutually beneficial relationships allow both plants and insects to survive in conditions that seem impossibly harsh. Alpine ecosystems remind us that life finds ways to thrive even at the edge of what seems possible. Rainwater that falls today may have fallen thousands of years ago. The water cycle is ancient and continuous. The water falling as rain today has been cycling through Earth's systems for billions of years. It has been ocean water, glacial ice, river water, groundwater, clouds, rain, and water inside countless organisms. The water in your body has been part of oceans, part of ancient forests, perhaps even part of dinosaurs millions of years ago. Water evaporates from oceans, lakes, and land surfaces, rising into the atmosphere as vapor. It condenses into clouds and falls as precipitation, then flows through rivers back to the sea, or soaks into the ground to become groundwater. Some water gets locked away for longer periods in glaciers, ice caps, or deep aquifers, remaining out of circulation for hundreds or thousands of years before re-entering the cycle. This endless cycling means that water is a link across time as well as space. Every raindrop connects you to the deep history of Earth. The water that sustained ancient civilizations, that filled the oceans when life first evolved, that carved the Grand Canyon, all of it is still here, still cycling. We do not consume water in the way we consume other resources. We borrow it temporarily, then return it to the cycle. Understanding this helps us appreciate water's preciousness and the importance of keeping it clean. Trees communicate stress through volatile chemical signals. When a tree is attacked by insects, it does not suffer in silence. It releases volatile organic compounds, chemicals that evaporate into the air and can be detected by other trees. Neighboring trees, sensing these chemical signals, can activate their own defensive responses, producing compounds that make their leaves less palatable or more toxic to insects. This early warning system allows trees to defend themselves before being attacked. These chemical signals can also attract predators of the herbivores attacking the tree. Some trees release chemicals that specifically attract wasps that parasitize caterpillars. The tree is essentially calling for help, summoning defenders to attack its attackers. This three-way interaction between plant, herbivore, and predator shows how complex ecological relationships can be. Scientists are still learning about the range and specificity of these chemical signals. Some experiments suggest trees can distinguish between different types of threats and produce different defensive responses. Others indicate that plants might recognize their own kin and share resources or signals preferentially with relatives. If confirmed, these findings would reveal that plants have far more sophisticated sensing and response capabilities than we traditionally assumed. The silent green world around us may be full of conversation we are only beginning to detect. Sand dunes move like slow-motion waves across deserts. Sand dunes are not static features but dynamic forms that move across the landscape. Wind blows sand grains up the gentle windward side of a dune. When grains reach the crest, they tumble down the steep leeward face. This process gradually moves the entire dune forward, typically in the direction of the prevailing wind. Some dunes move meters per year, gradually migrating across desert landscapes. Different wind patterns create different dune shapes. Crescent-shaped barchan dunes form where winds blow consistently from one direction, and sand supply is limited. Long, linear dunes form where winds blow from varying directions. Star dunes with multiple arms form where winds come from all directions. These shapes are so consistent that similar dunes appear in different deserts around the world and even on Mars. Moving dunes can be destructive, burying roads, buildings, and farmland, but they also create habitats. The windward and leeward sides of dunes have different microclimates, supporting different communities of plants and animals. The interdunal areas between dunes may catch water, creating temporary wetlands. Some animals specialize in dune environments, adapted to the shifting substrate and extreme temperatures. Dunes remind us that deserts are not static wastelands but dynamic landscapes, constantly reshaped by wind. Photosynthesis created Earth's oxygen-rich atmosphere. Before photosynthesis evolved, Earth's atmosphere contained little oxygen. The early atmosphere was rich in carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and other gases, but oxygen was scarce. Then, about 3 billion years ago, cyanobacteria evolved the ability to use sunlight to split water molecules, releasing oxygen as a byproduct. This was one of the most important events in Earth's history. At first, the oxygen produced by cyanobacteria reacted with iron dissolved in the oceans, creating rust that fell to the seafloor. These ancient rust deposits, called banded iron formations, are visible in rocks billions of years old. But eventually, all the dissolved iron was oxidized. Oxygen began accumulating in the oceans and atmosphere. This event, called the Great Oxidation Event, occurred roughly 2,400 million years ago. For many organisms, oxygen was toxic. The Great Oxidation Event may have caused a mass extinction of organisms adapted to low oxygen conditions, but it also created opportunities. Oxygen enabled aerobic respiration, a far more efficient way of extracting energy from food. Complex multicellular life, including all animals, depends on this oxygen-rich atmosphere. Every breath you take is made possible by photosynthetic organisms that spent billions of years transforming Earth's atmosphere into something we can breathe. Seasons exist because Earth's axis is tilted. Many people believe seasons are caused by Earth's distance from the sun, with summer occurring when Earth is closest. But this is incorrect. Seasons are caused by the tilt of Earth's axis. Earth's axis is tilted about 23.5 degrees relative to its orbital plane. As Earth orbits the Sun, this tilt means that different hemispheres receive more direct sunlight at different times of year. During Northern Hemisphere summer, the North Pole is tilted toward the Sun. Sunlight strikes the Northern Hemisphere more directly, delivering more energy per unit area and creating longer days. 6 months later, when Earth is on the opposite side of its orbit, the North Pole tilts away from the Sun. Sunlight strikes at a lower angle, spreading the same energy over more area and creating shorter days. This is Northern Hemisphere winter. The Southern Hemisphere experiences the opposite pattern. Near the equator, the sun is high in the sky year-round, so seasons are less pronounced. Near the poles, the difference between summer and winter is extreme, with continuous daylight in summer and continuous darkness in winter. This tilt, and its effects on sunlight distribution, shape climates, ecosystems, and the very rhythm of life on Earth. Without the tilt, there would be no seasons, and Earth would be a very different planet. Grassland soils are among the world's deepest and richest. When you think of fertile soil, you might picture a forest floor covered in leaves. But actually, some of the deepest and most fertile soils develop under grasslands. Grasslands have extensive root systems. often containing more biomass below ground than above. When grass roots die, they decompose in place, adding organic matter directly into the soil at many depths. Over thousands of years, this process builds up layers of rich, dark soil. In some grassland regions, topsoil can be several meters deep. This soil is rich in organic matter, well structured, and holds nutrients effectively. These characteristics make grassland soils ideal for agriculture. The world's great grain-producing regions, like the American Midwest, the Ukrainian steppes, and the Argentine pampas, all developed on former grasslands. But converting grassland to cropland has costs. Plowing breaks up soil structure and exposes organic matter to oxygen, accelerating decomposition and releasing stored carbon. Much of the carbon that accumulated over thousands of years has been released within decades of cultivation. Erosion becomes a serious problem without the dense grass root systems to hold soil in place. Protecting remaining grasslands and adopting farming practices that rebuild soil organic matter are crucial for maintaining agricultural productivity and storing carbon. Some animals can regenerate lost body parts. Many animals have remarkable regenerative abilities that seem almost magical. Starfish can regrow lost arms, and some species can regenerate an entire body from a single severed arm. Salamanders can regrow limbs, tails, parts of their hearts, portions of their brains, and even damaged eyes. Planarian flatworms can regenerate from tiny fragments, with each piece growing into a complete individual. These regenerative abilities involve complex processes. Cells at the wound site must first stop dividing and form a structure called a blastema, a mass of undifferentiated cells. These cells then receive signals that tell them what structures to form, gradually rebuilding the lost body part. The genetic programs that guide this process are similar to those that guide initial development, reactivated in adult animals when needed. Understanding regeneration could revolutionize human medicine. Why can salamanders regrow limbs while mammals cannot? Mammals can regenerate some tissues, like skin and liver, but not complex structures, like limbs. Researchers are studying regenerative species to understand the cellular and genetic mechanisms involved, hoping to find ways to enhance human regenerative abilities. These animals remind us that the boundaries between possible and impossible in biology are not fixed. What seems like science fiction may simply be biology we do not yet understand. Estuaries are nurseries for countless marine species. Where rivers meet the ocean, brackish waters create unique ecosystems called estuaries. These transition zones experience fluctuating salinity, temperature, and water levels as tides rise and fall and river flow varies. Despite these challenging conditions, or perhaps because of them, estuaries are among the most productive ecosystems on Earth. They serve as nurseries for many marine species, including commercially important fish and shellfish. Young fish and crustaceans use estuaries as safe havens where food is abundant and predators are relatively few. The mixing of fresh and salt water brings nutrients from both terrestrial and marine sources, supporting high primary productivity. Salt marshes and seagrass beds in estuaries provide shelter and food. As juveniles grow, they gradually move into deeper, more saline waters, eventually joining adult populations in the ocean. Estuaries also provide crucial ecosystem services for humans. They filter pollutants from water flowing to the ocean. They protect coastlines from storm surges. They support commercial fishing, recreation, and tourism. But estuaries are threatened by development, pollution, and sea level rise. Protecting these transitional zones means protecting the fish populations and the coastal communities that depend on them. Estuaries remind us that edges and boundaries, far from being empty spaces, are often zones of great productivity and importance. Morning dew is water condensing from air onto cool surfaces. On calm, clear nights, the ground loses heat to space through thermal radiation. As the ground cools, it cools the air immediately above it. When this air cools below the dew point, the temperature at which water vapor condenses, moisture condenses out of the air onto surfaces, forming dew. By morning, grass, leaves, and other surfaces are covered with tiny droplets, even though no rain has fallen. For some plants and animals, dew provides crucial moisture. In deserts and dry regions, dew can be the primary source of water for some organisms. Certain beetles in the Namib Desert have evolved specialized behaviors to collect dew. They stand on their heads on dunes before dawn, positioning their bodies so condensation forms on their backs and trickles down to their mouths. Plants can also absorb dew through their leaves, supplementing water taken up by roots. The presence and amount of dew depends on several factors: humidity, temperature, wind, and cloud cover. Windy nights mix the air, preventing the surface layer from cooling enough for condensation. Cloudy nights trap heat, reducing cooling. This is why dew forms most abundantly on clear, calm nights with moist air. These same conditions that create dew can also create frost when temperatures drop below freezing. Both are examples of water cycling between vapor and liquid or solid states, processes that occur constantly in the natural world. Soil is alive, with billions of microorganisms. What looks like lifeless dirt is actually a thriving ecosystem. A single teaspoon of healthy soil contains more microorganisms than there are people on Earth. These bacteria, archaea, fungi, protozoa, and other microscopic organisms form complex communities that drive nutrient cycling, decomposition, and countless other essential processes. Without soil microbes, terrestrial ecosystems would cease to function. Different microorganisms perform different roles. Some break down complex organic compounds, releasing nutrients in forms plants can use. Others fix nitrogen from the atmosphere. Some form partnerships with plant roots, helping them absorb water and nutrients. Others produce antibiotics that protect plants from pathogens. Still others aggregate soil particles, creating the pore spaces that allow air and water to move through soil. The diversity of soil microorganisms is staggering. Scientists estimate that most soil microbial species have never been cultured or studied in laboratories. We are only beginning to understand the complexity of soil communities and the functions they perform. What is clear is that soil health depends on microbial diversity. Practices that harm soil microbes, like excessive tillage or pesticide use, can degrade soil function. Protecting soil means protecting the invisible communities that live within it. Hurricanes redistribute ocean heat from tropics to higher latitudes. Hurricanes are destructive storms, but they also play a role in Earth's climate system. They form over warm tropical oceans, where water temperatures exceed about 26 degrees Celsius. As warm, moist air rises, it releases latent heat, fueling the storm. Hurricanes are essentially heat engines that extract energy from warm ocean water and convert it to wind and motion. In the process, hurricanes transport enormous amounts of heat from low latitudes toward higher latitudes. They stir the ocean, bringing cool water from depth to the surface, which cools the ocean surface and reduces the energy available for future storms. They also carry moisture into higher latitudes, where it falls as rain. This redistribution of heat and moisture is part of how Earth's climate system moves energy from equator to poles. Climate change may be affecting hurricanes in complex ways. Warmer oceans provide more energy, potentially making hurricanes more intense. Rising sea levels increase the damage from storm surges. But changes in atmospheric circulation patterns may affect where and how frequently hurricanes form. Understanding these changes is crucial for coastal communities. Hurricanes remind us that weather systems, even destructive ones, are part of larger patterns that regulate Earth's climate. Migratory fish connect freshwater and ocean ecosystems. Salmon are famous for their migrations, swimming from the ocean back to the freshwater streams where they were born to spawn. But salmon are just one example of fish that migrate between fresh and salt water. Eels do the reverse, living in fresh water but migrating to the ocean to spawn. These migrations, called anadromous for fish that spawn in freshwater and catadromous for those that spawn in the ocean, connect aquatic ecosystems in important ways. When salmon return to freshwater streams after years in the ocean, they bring marine nutrients with them. As they spawn and die, their bodies decompose, releasing nitrogen, phosphorus, and other nutrients into streams and surrounding forests. These nutrients support not just aquatic ecosystems but terrestrial ones as well. Bears, eagles, and other animals feed on salmon, carrying nutrients far from streams. Trees near salmon streams show higher growth rates and contain marine-derived nitrogen, evidence of this nutrient subsidy from the ocean. Dams, overfishing, and habitat destruction have severely reduced migratory fish populations. The loss of these migrations means the loss of the ecosystem connections they maintained. Restoring fish passages around dams, protecting spawning habitat, and managing fisheries sustainably are all ways to restore these connections. Migratory fish remind us that seemingly separate ecosystems, freshwater and marine, are linked by the animals that move between them. Tree rings record forest fire history. Trees bear scars from fires they have survived, and these scars appear in tree rings. When fire burns the cambium layer beneath the bark on one side of a tree, the tree forms scar tissue visible in the rings. By examining fire scars in multiple trees, scientists can reconstruct fire history going back centuries. They can determine how often fires occurred, how severe they were, and even what season they burned based on where in the annual ring the scar appears. This fire history helps us understand that many forests evolved with fire as a natural part of their ecology. Some forests historically burned every few years in low-intensity surface fires that cleared underbrush but left large trees alive. Other forests experienced less frequent but more severe fires that killed most trees and reset succession. Indigenous peoples also used fire as a management tool, conducting controlled burns to maintain habitat for game and edible plants. Fire suppression over the past century has altered fire regimes in many forests. Without regular low-intensity burns, fuels accumulate, making fires larger and more severe when they eventually occur. Some forests that evolved with frequent fire now face catastrophic blazes. Understanding historical fire patterns from tree rings helps land managers restore more natural fire regimes through prescribed burning and other techniques. The trees themselves are archives, recording fire history in the rings of their wood. Flowers use ultraviolet patterns, invisible to humans. When you look at a flower, you see colors and patterns. But if you could see ultraviolet light as many insects do, you would see additional patterns invisible to human eyes. Many flowers have ultraviolet markings that guide pollinators to nectar, like landing strips on a runway. These patterns, called nectar guides, help efficient pollinators find rewards quickly, increasing the likelihood they will visit more flowers of the same species. This invisible layer of communication between flowers and insects evolved because many pollinators, especially bees, see ultraviolet light well, but cannot see red colors that humans perceive easily. Flowers that look uniformly yellow to us may have bold patterns in ultraviolet that guide bees to the center. Flowers that appear white may have ultraviolet patterns that make them visible and attractive to insects, even in shade. Photographing flowers with cameras sensitive to ultraviolet light reveals these hidden patterns, showing us how different the world looks to insect eyes. This reminds us that our perception of nature is limited by our sensory capabilities. Other organisms experience the world differently, perceiving signals and patterns we cannot detect without technology. The natural world is richer and more complex than our eyes alone can reveal. Wolves change rivers by changing animal behavior. The return of wolves to Yellowstone had surprising effects that extended far beyond controlling elk populations. The presence of wolves changed elk behavior. Elk became more vigilant and avoided areas where they were vulnerable to wolf attack, particularly valley bottoms and areas near rivers with limited escape routes. As elk spent less time in these areas, vegetation recovered. Willows and aspens, which elk had heavily browsed, began growing back. As riparian vegetation recovered, it stabilized riverbanks, reducing erosion. Streams began meandering less and cutting less deeply into valley floors. Beaver populations increased because willows provided both food and dam-building material. Beaver dams created ponds that provided habitat for fish, amphibians, and waterfowl. Songbirds increased in the recovering vegetation. The entire ecosystem changed in response to the return of a single predator. This cascade of ecological effects, triggered by a top predator, is called a trophic cascade. It demonstrates how species at different trophic levels, from predators to herbivores to plants, are intimately connected. The landscape was physically reshaped not just by what wolves killed, but by how they changed elk behavior. This phenomenon, where fear of predation alters prey behavior and subsequently ecosystem structure, shows that ecological relationships are often complex and indirect, with effects rippling through entire systems. Ancient air trapped in ice reveals past climates. When snow falls in polar regions and compresses into ice, it traps tiny air bubbles. These bubbles contain samples of the ancient atmosphere, preserved for thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years. Scientists drill cores through ice sheets in Greenland and Antarctica, extracting cylinders of ice that they then analyze. Each layer represents a year of snowfall, and the bubbles in that layer contain air from that year. By analyzing the chemistry of trapped air, scientists can measure past atmospheric carbon dioxide levels, methane concentrations, and other gases. They can also analyze the ice itself to determine past temperatures. Isotopes of oxygen and hydrogen in the ice revealed temperature when the snow fell. Dust layers indicate periods of greater windiness. Volcanic ash layers mark eruptions. Each ice core is an archive of climate history. The longest ice cores extend back over 800,000 years, revealing multiple glacial and interglacial cycles. These records show that carbon dioxide levels and temperatures rise and fall together, confirming the link between greenhouse gases and climate. They also show that current atmospheric carbon dioxide levels are higher than at any time in the past 800,000 years, clear evidence of human impact. Ancient air, trapped in ice, tells us about Earth's past and warns us about our future. Symbiotic relationships can be found everywhere in nature. Look closely at almost any organism, and you will likely find it is not living alone. Symbiotic relationships, partnerships between different species, are ubiquitous in nature. Some are mutually beneficial, like the relationship between flowering plants and their pollinators. Others are parasitic, benefiting one partner at the expense of the other. Still, others are commensal, benefiting one partner without affecting the other. Even organisms that seem solitary often depend on symbionts. Your gut contains trillions of bacteria that help digest food and synthesize vitamins. Termites cannot digest wood without protozoa in their guts. Corals depend on algae living in their tissues to photosynthesize and provide energy. Many trees cannot grow well without mycorrhizal fungi. These partnerships are so intimate that the organisms cannot survive without their partners. Symbiosis blurs the boundaries between individuals. Is a lichen one organism or two? Is a coral animal or a partnership between animal and algae? These questions have no simple answers. Life exists not as isolated individuals, but as communities at every scale. Recognizing this challenges us to think differently about nature, seeing not just species, but relationships, not just individuals, but interdependent systems. Symbiosis reminds us that cooperation is as fundamental to life as competition. Your body contains elements forged in ancient stars. The atoms in your body have extraordinary histories. The hydrogen in your water, the calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, all were created in stars. Hydrogen formed in the Big Bang, but heavier elements were forged in the nuclear furnaces of stars or in the violent explosions of supernovae. When massive stars exhaust their fuel and explode, they scatter these elements across space. New stars and planets, including our Sun and Earth, form from this enriched material. This means you are literally made of stardust. The atoms that compose your body cycled through multiple generations of stars before becoming part of Earth. They have been part of rocks, oceans, the atmosphere, countless organisms. Each atom has an ancient history stretching back to the formation of the universe. The carbon in your DNA, the oxygen you breathe, the calcium in your bones, all were forged in stellar cores billions of years ago. This cosmic connection places human existence in a broader context. We are not separate from nature or from the universe. We are part of it, made from the same material as stars and planets, following the same physical laws, participating in the same chemical cycles. Understanding this deep connection can inspire both humility and wonder, reminding us that we are temporary gatherings of ancient atoms that will eventually return to the universe and become part of new forms. The natural world continues to inspire innovation. Throughout history, humans have looked to nature for inspiration, learning from the adaptations and strategies that have evolved over millions of years. This practice, called biomimicry, has led to numerous innovations. Velcro was inspired by burrs that stuck to clothing. Airplane wing designs have been influenced by bird wings. Bullet train noses in Japan were modeled after kingfisher beaks, which can pierce water smoothly when diving for fish. More recent innovations continue this tradition. Scientists studying gecko feet, which can climb smooth surfaces, have developed new adhesives. Researchers examining lotus leaves, which stay clean because water beads up and rolls off, have created self-cleaning surfaces. Engineers studying termite mounds, which maintain stable temperatures without mechanical systems, have designed buildings with natural climate control. Shark skin-inspired materials reduce drag in swimming suits and ship hulls. Nature has been solving problems through evolution for billions of years, testing countless solutions and refining what works. This makes it an invaluable source of ideas for human innovation. As we face challenges like climate change, resource scarcity, and pollution, nature may offer solutions we have not yet considered. Learning from natural systems, understanding how they function sustainably over long time periods, can guide us toward technologies and practices that work with nature rather than against it. Every organism is connected to countless others. No organism lives in isolation. Each exists within a web of relationships, connections to other species through food webs, competition, mutualism, parasitism, and countless other interactions. Remove one species, and effects ripple through the system, sometimes in unexpected ways. Add a new species, and the entire community adjusts. Ecosystems are not collections of independent actors, but integrated systems where everything affects everything else. These connections extend across space and time. A butterfly in Brazil may depend on trees that depend on fungi, that depend on nutrients brought by migratory birds from North America. A fish in the ocean may eventually become food for a bear, which then fertilizes a tree, which drops leaves that feed stream insects, which are eaten by young salmon that swim to the ocean. Each connection is a thread in an enormous tapestry that spans the entire planet. Understanding these connections changes how we think about conservation. Protecting a single species may require protecting its habitat, its food sources, its pollinators, the predators that control its competitors, and countless other elements of its ecosystem. Similarly, damaging one element can harm many others. This interconnectedness means that the health of ecosystems depends on maintaining the complex web of relationships that have developed over evolutionary time. Breaking connections has consequences. Conclusion. We are part of nature, not separate from it. As we come to the end of our journey through nature's wonders, one truth becomes clear. We are not observers, standing outside nature, looking in. We are participants, embedded within natural systems at every scale. The air we breathe connects us to forests and oceans. The food we eat connects us to soil, to photosynthesis, to the entire web of life. The water in our bodies has cycled through Earth's systems for billions of years. The atoms that compose us were forged in stars. This connection is not abstract or philosophical. It is physical and immediate. The health of natural systems directly affects human well-being. Clean air, fresh water, stable climate, pollination, pest control, food production, all depend on functioning ecosystems. When we damage nature, we damage the systems that support us. When we protect nature, we protect ourselves, but the connection goes deeper than utility. Nature shapes who we are in ways both visible and invisible. Our bodies follow rhythms set by the sun and seasons. Our minds find peace and restoration in natural settings. Our cultures, stories, and sense of meaning are intertwined with the living world. We evolved as part of nature, and we remain part of it, despite our technologies and cities. Closing meditation. As you lie here, breathing slowly and deeply, imagine yourself as part of this vast web of life. Feel the air entering your lungs, oxygen produced by distant forests and ocean plankton. Feel the steady beat of your heart, pumped by iron forged in ancient stars. Feel your body resting on earth, supported by soil teeming with invisible life, part of a planet that has nurtured life for billions of years. You are not separate from the forest or the ocean or the sky. You are made of the same elements, following the same patterns, participating in the same cycles. The boundary between you and the natural world is not a wall but a permeable membrane. You exchange breath with plants, water with clouds and streams, atoms with the entire earth. Rest in this knowledge. Let it ease any sense of isolation or separation. You are part of something vast and ancient, something that will continue long after your brief time has passed. The atoms that compose you will return to the world, becoming part of new forms, new life, new stories. You are a temporary pattern in the eternal flow of matter and energy through the living earth. As you drift towards sleep, let yourself dissolve into this larger whole. Feel the gentle pull of ancient rhythms, the slow turning of seasons, the patient flow of water and air and nutrients through the web of life. You are home, you are held. You are part of nature, and nature is part of you, now and always. If you happen to still be awake, you can go ahead and watch the next video when you are ready. But if your eyes are growing heavy, let the quiet presence of the natural world hold you and carry you softly into rest. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and drift into sleep, into stillness, into the vast and timeless embrace of the living earth. Good night.